Hello and welcome to the Outcast. I'm your host HC. With me is,
Wolf.
and today we've honestly been planning on doing this for a while, and honestly we're also kind of late to this, but hey,
No, we're
better.
right on time.
No, we're not. Better late than never. Better late than never. But because today we're starting to talk about the Castlevania Netflix series, and you know, I guess best place to start with is Wolf. What is your experience with Castlevania besides this? Because this was obviously a big franchise.
I've played a few of the games, but like nothing major, right? Like my, experience with it is very like, hey, I've played some of the games, it's kind of it. Like I've never been super into it. When I heard they were making a show, an anime series of it, I was like, how in the world is this going to be good? Because like, don't these games have next to no story whatsoever? Like, what story do you get from these games? But apparently they have lore and story when I looked it up. So I think that
Yeah,
explains it. My
so
experience.
ironically enough, I seem to have more experience than you do. Like again, I won't say I'm a big fan or something. I also played like some of the games. Like I tried the classics out. I tried Symphony of the Night. I think, yeah, it was Symphony of the Night. Some of the 3D ones. I think I played the reboot one, which is more God of War than Castlevania. I played some of them, and I am aware that there is a lore. I am aware that there's sort of an order in which these things come from, but I won't say I'm an expert on that.
God, there's a lot of Castlevania games looking at it. I didn't realize there's this many.
Yeah. Like there are many, and the thing is that if you ask me what came out about the stuff which came out, after Symphony of the Night and Castlevania 64, and between those and the reboot, like the Lords of Shadow reboot, I have zero. Actually, no. A friend of mine had one of the PS2 games, but all I remember about that is that the main guy looked like a girl, and honestly, that's an anime standard. So yeah.
Well, I say there's a lot. A lot of it's just, hey, here's Castlevania. Hey, here's Castlevania on the Game Boy. Hey, here's Castlevania on the Game Boy Advance. Hey, here's
Yeah,
Castlevania on the
there
DS.
are
A lot of it's
there
just
are
re-releases, but
yeah, and for the record, I just want to say that I want to specify if I'm gonna talk something about the lore of the games, if I'm going to talk something about the connection between the show and the games, I I have very basic information. I have no idea if any of the DS or Game Boy Advance or any of those later games fit in with what I know of the classics.
mhm.
If I mess something up, excuse me. I'm not even say I'm a casual fan, but I kept up once in a while. I played some of these things. I know
Mhm.
some of the stuff, and totally not because I watched the Angry Video Game Nerd reviews plenty of times. Well,
I, from what I know, right, like the last Castlevania game looking at it was Lords of Shadow, which I think everyone would agree that was not a good game, from what I remember
Here's
of it.
here's the thing. From my experience with it, and just the general consensus, it's that it's a good game, but it's just why did we call it Castlevania? It doesn't feel like Castlevania. It feels like God of War
I heard that,
more
and then
more
also
so.
heard that it wasn't a good God of War game either. Like it was bad God of War and
I
even worse Castlevania game.
honestly, I won't necessarily say it was a bad God of War by any means. Like I played
But
bad
it
God of
wasn't
War
good God of
clones.
War though.
Um, man, it's been so long. I don't
It's
remember
fair,
exactly, but
fair.
I,
It
I'll,
has for
I'll
me as
say
well.
that, I'll say that from what I personally played of it, and if I recall some reviews at the time, I remember them being okay for what they were. Also it's a
Mhm.
reboot. It's not. I've seen worse reboots for classic games, but that's a story for another
That's
day.
fair. But I do
Today we are
I
gonna.
bring that up though because this is the first new, like looking at season 1 when it came out in 2017, this is the first new Castlevania thing people have had in quite some time.
Yeah, this is the point where we just say fuck you, Konami, because Konami are kind of shit. So for
Fair.
plenty of reasons, if you know, good. If you don't, Google it, you'll find the reasons.
No,
But
fair. Other than, well, no, I take that back. This is the first new Castlevania thing we've had that's good. That's not a, I think it's, what do they call them? They call them um, the machine, a gambling machine, essentially. I
the
forget
pachinko machines, yeah.
pachinko. That's the word. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, because that's one of the reasons Konami are considered such shitheads these days, because it's like, yeah, fuck the console market, pachinko, that's where the future is.
I mean, they make a lot of money doing it, so.
Yeah, in Japan, what about the people outside of it?
We don't exist, HC. I mean,
I guess
how
we
they
don't.
see it
I guess we
sometimes.
don't.
But
Basically.
I
So to the show.
yeah.
So before we actually go into the show, so you said you heard about this, and you just thought, is it even going to work because there's
Yep.
no story?
I didn't
That
watch
was
this when it first came out, right? Because
no, but I mean more when you first heard about it. When
when
you
I
said
first
before
heard
that.
about it, my thought was, I mean, it's Castlevania. Castlevania doesn't have a lot of story. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with this. It might take more from the newer games, and I don't remember the newer games being very good from what I understood, though I didn't play many of them. Not all the newer games. Some of the newer games were good, but details. But my
Like
next
you
big
held,
thing was right, that it's based on a video game. It's a show based on a video game. Those very rarely ever go well.
there are not a lot of good ones on those,
But
but
I will say, right, like at that time, 2017, we were starting to get a few things. I think the Ratchet and Clank movie had come out at that time too, and a few other
it
things.
was a year before,
A year before. So yeah, we were starting to get video game stuff that was actually good, surprisingly enough.
I really liked the Ratchet movie when it came out, but the more I look back at it, the more I'm like,
don't get me wrong, the Ratchet and Clank movie isn't, the greatest thing ever, but it's fun. Like, I think, watching it at the time.
My problem with it, like, I've shown it to a few other friends who had no idea what the games were about, and they were like, I still enjoyed it, even though it wasn't the greatest thing ever. But like, to me, I found that as a fan of the franchise, I really enjoyed it back when I first watched it. But like as a movie, it has really big problems. But
sure, absolutely.
It was a leap. It was not a leap, but it was a step in the right direction for these kinds of adaptations.
The big thing, like, it was something that I watched, and it didn't feel like, I watched this not because it's good, but because it's bad. No, I watched that because, it was fun. Like, I didn't feel like I wasted my time with that at the very least. I go back and watch the old.
Let me tease you all to our big Ratchet and Clank podcast coming next year for their 20th anniversary. If we brought it up, we brought it up. Whatever.
Fair enough. I go back and watch like the old Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter films, not because they're good, but because they're bad, and they're good in all the wrong ways. It's a treat. It's a lovely treat.
You love it for the same reason you love The Room, because it's so.
It's so
Bison, you're off the air.
It's so campy. It's so over the top. It's terrible for all of the right reasons.
And just because I can't go into a video game, just to say that, because we're talking about video game adaptations, Sonic Sun AM in '93 is still considered a really good show. So, but I'm very much aware it was the exception and not the rule.
Yeah. And again, right, like, so for the longest time, I stayed away from this until I think season 2, maybe 3 came out, but I want to say 2. Just assuming there's no way this is going to be good. This is going to be terrible. I'm not even going to bother with wasting my time on it.
Also, should I mention that this is not Castlevania's first venture into animation, because Simon Belmont was in Captain N, and that show is awful too. Him
I did
especially.
not know that, but oof.
No, like, this is like, take a character. You know how there's like the an acronym of like in name only. That was Simon Belmont in name only. The character is not like that, even from the bit that you have in the non-dialogue in the non-dialogue NES games.
Mm.
Like, no, just no.
But yeah, so I stayed away from this and didn't really jump into it until about the second season that came out, I would want to say. And around that time, that's when I started to hear people talking about it. It's like, whoa, this show's really good. This is amazing. The second season is just, blowing my mind. And, I decided, you know what? I'm hearing enough good about it. I'll give it a shot. And lo and behold, the first season, I actually enjoyed it. It's actually good.
Okay, so just to give a heads up, have you seen the rest of the show?
Yes,
Oh,
I've seen, after, yeah, I jumped into it on season 3. When season 3 started to come out, that's when I started to hear a lot of good things about it, and that's when I jumped into it. So that'd
okay,
be 2020. So yeah, I've seen all of it at that point because I watched the
okay.
first one. It's like, all right, I'm interested. You're good. You got me hooked into a degree. I want to see where this goes, and then from there is just binge, 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 binge
So,
because I just enjoyed it that much.
okay, so for me, even though I have more experience, like when I heard that there was a Castlevania Netflix show, I was like, huh, again, it came completely out of the blue because this is a franchise I haven't heard about in years prior to that point. And
2014,
then
last peep from them.
yeah, like, but even so, there weren't really any rumors at least not that I've heard of. There were no
Mm.
rumors about this. The name was just not brought up until suddenly people started talking about, oh, there's a Netflix Castlevania series. And I'm like, okay, interesting, because I heard for the longest time that people wanted to do a movie, like a Castlevania movie, and apparently this is what it was supposed to be. Like the movie suffered in development hell, and then after years of it, Netflix got the project, and now we have a show.
For the
That is,
better, probably.
you say that, we'll get to it, but everyone there talked like, oh, there's a Netflix Castlevania show, and I was like, okay, I'm interested. So I saw the first season when it came out, and as kind of giving my non-spoilery thoughts away right now, I liked it, but I also felt that it wasn't quite there. Something was missing. I knew that I would love it if there was more. And yet, when we got more in other seasons, I just didn't find the time to sit down and watch them. Like when we're gonna cover season 2, 3, and 4 in the next few episodes, this will be my first time experiencing them. But season 1, I did watch back when it initially premiered, and now I rewatched it for this.
Okay.
So with that said, the kind of non-spoilery thoughts. I was one thing I appreciate about this show is that we literally went to the beginning of the timeline, because to those who are familiar with the game, they know that Trevor Belmont is the protagonist of Castlevania 3. And those who
Mhm.
play the series know that Castlevania 3 is technically, if a later game changed that, I don't know about it, but this was the first chronological game in the franchise. This was like this detail that Trevor was the first Belmont to fight Dracula.
Mhm.
Because before this, in the previous two games, we had Simon Belmont, and then we went back to his ancestor Trevor. So I really found it interesting that they didn't just start with Simon because he's the popular one, he's the known one. That when the Castlevania finally got into Smash Brothers, we got Simon Richter too, but Simon was the
I
main attraction.
I think
So
they did it because it kind of pulled the third Castlevania game has a bit more story to it. That's when it started really gaining kind of more story-ish
not
elements.
not even sure about that, because if that's the case, then they could have just started with Richter with Dracula X and Symphony of the Night.
Nobody
But
cares about Richter.
you'd be surprised,
I'm
dude. You'd be
joking,
surprised.
but
You'd be surprised.
I
But
think like it has.
because legit, he's no like because Richter is like from the games that a lot of people consider some of the best.
Mhm.
Like
I
so,
know.
uh, but with that, so I found it interesting that they didn't just go for what people would find familiar necessarily. They went with something that people know, but we literally went back to. We start with the beginning. We start with Trevor first taking on, first taking on Dracula. Obviously, we don't get to Dracula in this season, but still, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that direction.
I think it's a good decision because it's a good base for them to explore more from, right? Because nobody's going to be expecting certain things to happen if they start somewhere else, right?
Yes. Also, just a heads up, if you read the plot in the title screen for Castlevania 3, that is some of the worst English you'd ever see in your life. So it's nice to see an actual, plot to it, and actual characters to it. With that said, so overall thoughts on season 1 is that I think it's good, but I can definitely tell it was supposed to be a movie at some point because I feel like there's something missing.
My opinion, I wouldn't call it a season 1. I would call it a prologue.
Mm-hmm.
And I would look at season 2 as the true season 1, and then from there, right? Because that's what it feels like. It feels like this is genuinely nothing but setup for what comes after.
And essentially it's also going back to a movie comparison because the season is kind of structured like that. You basically get 88 minutes of setup for what is about to come. And don't get me wrong, it's good setup and there are good moments in it. And it's nice to see, things being, the structure starting to get, starting to build itself and doing a decent job at that. It's just that it feels like just when it's supposed to really get going, that's when it ends, and you need to wait for the next season.
I thinking of the movie thing, like that's not something I knew of, and it does make a lot more sense now, as in terms of how this plays out and how it feels when you watch it. That this may have been designed to be a movie at first, and a lot of the stuff we got here was already done for the movie. And they just brought it in and turned it into a four episode show instead. It makes a lot of sense, really, looking at it like that more. In terms of, how things play out. But, I would definitely go into it expecting, like, season 1, a prologue movie, essentially, that sets you up for what comes later and after.
I'd say so. It's not, but then again, it's not a bad prologue by any means. I've seen worse seasons that are just set up to future events than this.
We talked about a 4-episode show recently that was not great at all. So
yeah, and that didn't even lead to anything. It was just a thing that existed.
Yeah, so this is definitely miles better.
Yeah, and because it's actually good for one. So with that said, I guess so overall we liked it, but would you say that I would think that do you think I'll like the next few seasons more? Or...
Yes, I think season 2 is where it really steps up and you really get to feel and just be in the show, right? I think season 2 is miles above what season 1 is, right? I think season 1 is a nice taster, and God, I feel sorry for the people who watched season 1. It's like, God, I want more, and then had to wait essentially a little over a year to get season 2.
I was one of those people, and by the time we got season 2, I kind of forgot about it.
I mean, it's understandable because this just doesn't give you a lot to really. Yeah, I want to see more. I'm glad I got into it when season 2 or 3 was coming out instead, because I had a lot more to jump into and be excited for it and lead me into the next thing. If I had to wait for an entire year, I'd probably have forgotten it existed and just not really cared anymore after season 1, because it is, while fun and while, I would say overall good, there's not a lot in season 1 to really entice you to want to stick around and wait for a whole year to get something new, I would say.
Yeah. So with that said, should we just jump into spoilers. And
Sure.
we know it's an old show, but at the same time, spoilers if you haven't seen it. So in 3, 2, 1, you still here? Good. So let's talk in regards to the show itself, and the plot that we have in this 4 episodes. Again, don't know every possible thing about Castlevania, but I like how we actually start with a setup for Dracula. Like we start with how we met his wife, and his wife being burnt at the stake, and him suppressing a massive hatred for mankind because of that. I
Hmm.
am not sure if this is from the games. Maybe I'm not sure.
Can't
So,
tell you.
or from any
I assume
other
it is, but can't tell you.
Castlevania.
But it's a good setup though, because right, like you get to
Yeah,
see Lisa, you get to see Dracula, and you get to see like it's very quick, but you very quickly get to understand like, oh, these two like each other, and you can very easily tell why they like
yeah.
one another, and you can tell the
Like
chemistry
when
there is strong, even from that very brief
Yeah, because they share one
moment.
scene at the beginning, and then she's burnt at the stake, and but just from that one interaction, you can tell that they had a good connection, and and you believe that they were in love, and that's impressive. That's hella impressive.
And this,
So.
I will say, this is something that you can see that that you'll get to see explored a lot more in the coming seasons, right?
Mhm.
The connection that they
Yeah,
had and
okay,
how it formed and everything, and it just
I'll
serves to
keep that in mind.
strengthen the scenes, right? Which is really good.
Mhm. But then afterwards comes kind of, it's not necessarily a problem with the show, but it's like a pet peeve of mine that after all of this thing, after this happens, we get that one, we get that Dracula gives the people a
A
message
warning,
that,
yeah. They have one
yeah, a
year.
warning that, yeah, 1 year, I'm gonna wreck shit up, be gone. That is exactly how he says it, word for word. Don't question
Yeah, he
it.
he
So,
warns them to get their affairs in order because in 1 year's time he's going to come and kill them all,
mhm.
and
and
he does indeed.
that's the thing that he does it, but there's also this whole thing that some people legit take themselves and run away. So a lot of people, they just say, you know what, nope, we are not sent away for this. Bye. Look for us never,
But
basically.
most didn't, because most, again, like this was just a nonsense. Again, you got to remember, like it's set during like way back during medieval times, right? And people are,
Mhm.
and you have the whole Christian faith thing going on and everything like that, and Catholicism going on, and like you have dealing with archbishops and bishops, right? And everybody's like, this
And
is nonsense.
here's
This is just a, a fake warning
this
from
is
the
what I
devil,
was
quote unquote.
this is what I was getting at, because with the addition of people actually trying to run away and trying to leave, there are all the bishops and all of these people who are like, hey, look at this. A year passed and we didn't hear from this guy. So yeah, you shouldn't believe it. And then Dracula attacks. And it's like, oh, I hate these people. Like, but this is a pet peeve of mine. This is just that, there are a lot of big religious people who are all over the place in real life too. And I recently had some run in with these people, and they drove me nuts. So
Mm.
whenever I see them represented in shows, it's like,
But
you're
it
you're
does make sense here, right? Nothing
no,
feels
it
out of
makes
place.
sense. It makes sense, and it
But I do.
also, applies, and it also, applies to the games, because the entire thing with the Belmonts being shunned and everything, that's from the story from Castlevania 3. That
Mhm.
is a legit backstory, that they had a history of fighting demons, but that's also one of those things that made people all afraid of them, and treat them as we see them being treated here.
Mhm.
So I like the idea that Trevor really doesn't want anything to do with this, because it's like, yeah, my family does this, but you hate my family for doing it. So what the fuck? Leave me alone. And so that's interesting. It's just that I hate some of those characters that are like, yeah, our belief will save us when you see proof that it can't. Like, belief is good to have, but you also have to do something.
That's fair. Like again, I think it's one of those things of they portray it too well, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. But yeah, it it it's we start off with a bang because Dracula literally kills everyone in the city of Targovishta
Yeah,
as he
and
promised.
also kind of a risky move. We don't see Trevor until the end of episode one.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, until that very end where we see him in a bar getting drunk. That's it. And apparently, he's not even out there trying to do anything really. He's just in a bar getting drunk, just being to himself. And you find out as time goes on that Trevor just, again, like you said, right, his family's been shunned and excommunicated and exiled and attacked and killed. And he's probably one of the last left living. And he just doesn't care
Yeah.
about helping anybody but keeping himself alive. And that's it.
Hmm. And because again, when we understand why, because you see that as soon as the people at the bar notice that he's a Belmont, they give him shit for it.
Well, they
Like
blame him for it.
yeah, they blame him for this whole thing. And it's like, ugh.
But it makes sense that they'd blame him because people are looking for someone to blame for how terrible everything is and how awful everything is. And they find someone who's like, oh, you fought these things. You had connections to them. This is probably, you brought all this upon us. So it's probably all your fault. And when again, it makes sense that that's what the people would believe because what else are they going to believe? What else are they going to think, right? Like all of this is completely above them and way above anything they're capable of handling. So they portray everything very well for the time frame and what it's set in, which is the 1400s.
Yeah, definitely. So, but this leads us actually to one thing I have kind of a problem with this show, and that's pacing. And what I mean by that, are you with me, by the way?
Yeah, I'm with you. I hear you.
Okay, okay. Just wanted to make sure. So anyway, that's another thing with pacing. When you have this in mind now that this was supposed to be a movie, so you get the introduction. You get episode one is great. Like this is how you do a setup, quick to the like quick to the point. All everything that needs to be there is there. You understand the situation. You understand the characters. You understand how things are probably gonna play along. And then you get to episode two, which is a drag. Episode two is dragging and dragging, and it's like I'm not connected to Trevor enough just to see him walk around at places by himself, and
Yeah,
that's the majority of the episode.
yeah, episode 2 is we get to see Trevor's fight in the bar with the other drunkards, and then we move immediately to the town of Gresham, and we kind of get to see him walk around in that town and look and see how bad everything is in that town. And we hear about a thing called speakers and how apparently the people in the town, some of them at least, or a majority of them at least, are blaming the speakers for everything that's going wrong because God deems that it's their fault, or at least that's what the bishop of the town says, anyways. And then we see him talk with the speakers, and the speakers won't leave because the elder speaker's grandchild is missing. So Trevor agrees to go get her so long as they agree to leave, and that's kind of it.
Yeah,
And that's the end of
and
this episode. And it feels like kind of just a nothing episode in order to get the next episode set up and then go on from there to finish out with the fourth episode, right? Like this episode very much feels like I guess you'd say like the low point of a movie, right? The bare, the just hey, we're scene changing essentially, right? Something like that. I guess you'd say. I don't know exactly how to phrase it properly, but
yeah, but
it does feel like that lull point in a movie.
yeah, like it's one of those like I get you need a time to slow down, set up, and all of this, but it's also too
I mean,
slow at some
honestly,
point.
honestly, it feels like look at all the gore we can do, guys. Come on, all these dead bodies, the
Yeah,
entrails hanging around everywhere, the heads on spikes. Look at what we can do, and it's like
yeah.
I don't
Actually,
need
it
all
does
that.
feel like that. Yeah,
I don't
and
need all that.
like I get, it's the kind of universe where it works, but it's also we saw it at the bar fight. We'll see as later on. We don't
We
need a
saw it in the
whole
first
20.
episode.
Yeah, we don't need 22 minutes of just someone walking around like it's a freaking museum or something.
I will say though, we've not talked about it yet. The animation and the art style and just some of the backgrounds,
No, animation is
beautiful.
amazing.
Again, I think this was, we talked about them before because we covered something they did more recently, which was the He-Man anime, Powerhouse Animation Studios.
Yep.
They've done, a lot of really good stuff, and I believe this wasn't their first thing, but this was one of their more recent things, and it's good.
Yep, I agree. So yeah, but so episode 2 is kind of a slug, but it gets better in episode 3 and 4, and not only because the plot is actually going somewhere, but also because we are starting to see more elements that people might know from the games. Like this episode 3 is when we're introduced to Sypha.
Mm-hmm. My favorite. I love her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we may talk about Castlevania 3 for a second.
Sure.
So the thing about that game, because the Trevor is basically Simon Belmont in terms of how he controlled. It's
Mm-hmm.
he controls just the same. So for Castlevania 3, they actually added, they gave him a few friends that he could team up with. So there's Sypha, who we see in this season, Alucard, who we also see in this season, and Grant, who I think is showing up in the next season, from what I've heard. Is there a Grant at some point?
I don't remember right offhand. There
Okay.
might be.
But the thing is that at any point you can have either Trevor or another character, and and this is up to you, whoever you prefer to have alongside you. You can also beat the game with just Trevor, but you're a masochist if you do. That's all I'm saying. So Sypha was like the long ranged character, which made a lot of people like her. And from what I heard, she's the most popular option to go with as you travel to beat the game. Most people I saw who beat the game beat it with her and Trevor, which is why they actually made them a couple in the games. Something tells me from this one season that this is where it's going in this show too.
Spoilers. Can't say.
Okay. If it's spoilers and you can say, that means yes. Gotcha. No problem. Okay. We'll get
All
to
I'll
we'll
say,
get to
HC,
it.
is that and that's it.
Well, it fits with the games. That's all I'm gonna say. More. Anyway, so yeah, it's nice to see Sypha in here, and also I don't know, I'm not sure who the voice actress is, but I love her voice. Her voice is so cool.
The voice actress for Sypha, I actually know her a little bit. It is Alejandra Reynoso. She's not done a lot.
Okay.
She's done a bit here and there, but yeah, she does beautiful as Sypha. I love her voice as Sypha. She does great.
Yeah, she has a really cool voice.
Even in this first, even though we meet her like in the second to last episode, you get a very good, quick rendition of her character that just sells her very quickly and very well. I love the line when Trevor's being like kind of a dick to the speakers, and he says he's gonna go look for something to drink and get drunk a little bit. Sypha just comes up beside her granddad and says, I could piss in a bucket and tell him it's beer. And he's just like, Sypha. And she's like, what? He's rude. I love it. Instantly sold on her character at that moment.
That's another thing. Their banter, their banter with each other is really great. I really enjoy their interactions. I also, because there's also when they go to the castle together, and Trevor is hanging onto the clock. By the way, that clock tower level in the game is shit. Do not play it. This is where I broke. Fuck the clock tower. But anyway, he's hanging with his whip from the clock, and she's like, "Are you sure it's gonna hold?" And it's like, "Yeah, I think so," and it doesn't. And they constantly bicker at each other. And it's like, obviously, it's the cliche of guy and girl tease each other because they're totally gonna get together by the end. But they're fun. These two are fun together. I like seeing them together. And then
Yeah.
we get to Alucard.
I also love the small moment in episode 3 as well, where the speakers refuse to leave, so Trevor hides them in the area where he killed the Cyclops chamber, and they come in, see Trevor in the old house they were in, and ask him, where's the speakers at? And they're gone, they're hidden. You're never gonna get your hands on them. And then it flashes over to them, and one of the speakers, I think I saw it move again, like. They don't spare a ton for it, but they do have a few moments of comedy here or there that just beautiful, work very well.
Yeah. Agreed. So,
but yeah, episode we finally, they fight a bit, and then we, get into episode 4, and Dracula's army descends upon Gresham.
Yeah, we get to episode 4. We have this
the bishop in the first episode, who, because we see him in the third episode, right? Like Trevor's invited into the church by the bishop and is told to leave if he doesn't want to die, and if he, because otherwise, because they're going to kill all the speakers, and if he's still in the city when the speakers die, then the protection of killing the speakers won't do anything for the city, right? So he tells Trevor, leave or you too will be killed. And, obviously that's not, killing the speakers is going to do nothing. And we get into episode 4 where the night creatures enter the church, and, you actually get this really creepy scene of one of the night creatures, talking to the bishop and telling him, like, God was never here. God has never been fond of you, especially.
That was really creepy, actually.
It was creepy, but it, made a lot of sense because this bishop didn't seem like someone who was all that much of a godly person in to start with, right? So it's, I love how this supposed villain that we're setting up, who, I love how they end episode 3 off with him being like, with all the other cities gone and everything, and the church in dismay like it is, I am essentially the church myself. I love how they set him up as a villain, and then instantly, first thing in episode 4, he's just killed outright. No pomp or circumstance to it,
Which I also like, because keep in mind, when the games were new, Castlevania was the closest to horror gaming you had. So I like that they don't shy away from actually showing some gruesome stuff and things that you would consider creepy, like, and it's actually it's better at doing creepy stuff than the actual horror video game show that we talked about. Go back a few episodes for that. So with that said, I was about to talk about Alucard.
We get some great fights between Trevor and some of the members of the church, and we get to see Cypher being badass for a bit too, with her magic, which was great.
Yeah, which again, I like that you see how, again, like in the games, that Trevor is the most known for the close range encounters with his whip and everything, and they get the daggers and all, and then you have Cypher, who is just pure magic, and she uses magic to her advantage, and you get to see them actually work together. And it's really damn cool. Like, I felt like this is one of those how kids would imagine if these two characters could have been on screen at the same time back when the game came out, because you need to switch in between them, and only one of them is on screen in the game. So this is, I imagine, you can tell that these are people who play the game and actually put some of their love for it in this. And
actually,
that's always a picture.
Another scene I really like too, when you see, Trevor singles out one of the bishop's men, right? And you hear him pointing out all the terrible things the bishop, the guy, this random, priest, or I guess I wouldn't even really call him a priest, this random bishop guy, who works for the bishop, has done, and all the things that, they were going to try and convince the townspeople to do. The townspeople just turn on this guy instantly, just stabbing him with multiple different weapons and killing him outright. Like, they turn on this guy fast when Trevor starts calling him out.
Yeah.
In front of all of them. And then after that, that's when the night creatures attack, and you get Trevor instantly taking charge. And I also like the smaller addition of, they kind of give you this idea of like, oh, the church doesn't matter. It's literally nonsense, but there actually is some truth, because, you hear him ask out like, "Hey, is there an ordained priest here who is actually ordained in an actual church?" And this random dude steps up and is like, "All right, here's some water. You know what to do. Make holy water," and it does work. And you actually hear Trevor say, like, "Huh, he actually can create holy water. That's great, helpful."
Yeah.
Like I like the taking
Actually,
charge and getting the citizens to defend the city and showing them how to do it. It's nice.
fun fact: the holy water are actually weapons in the games.
Yeah, I know. which is a
Okay.
nice little callback to that.
Because apparently, I think in the manual they are not allowed to be called holy water. Like it's maybe in Japanese it is, but there's some sort of a right around it in the manual. I don't
Mhm.
remember what it's called, but everyone calls
Never
it the
get to
holy
see any
water.
hidden chicken though.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, actually, you know something. I hope this is something that they put in the next seasons, that they just find pork roast in the walls for no goddamn reason, and that they buy stuff with hearts because fuck, that's weird.
You'll get to see some interesting things next season. Then that's all I'll say,
Okay then.
and the season after
So,
especially.
mhm. Fair enough. We'll get there. Anyway, so Alucard.
Alucard, finally. I've kept you
Yeah,
long enough. We finally get to
and because
see Alucard.
yeah, and I just want to say, I so called it that they were going to give him that in their design they were gonna cater more towards the Symphony of the Night design than the Castlevania 3 design, because people love their Symphony of the Night. I would not be surprised if there are references to it in the later seasons because
There
okay.
absolutely are. I
Mhm.
not a spoiler. There are. You'll notice them very quickly.
Okay. Because, Symphony of the Night is basically the reason we have the term Metroidvania in
Hmm.
games now. So there's that.
Like when you speak of Castlevania, that's most people's go-to. I would say, to be honest.
Like in terms of favorites, this is one of the top three that it is brought up in conversation as
Hmm.
the best one.
Which makes a lot of sense. To be honest, I would
Mhm.
say.
So this is why I knew that they were gonna lean more towards him, and I think also it's not the same voice actor, but I think the voice also kind of emulates what the Symphony of the Night voice for Alucard is, and because maybe then again I'm saying it, and in Symphony of the Night all the voice actors kind of sounded like porn stars, so I don't know, but. This is not a compliment. This is not a complaint, by the way. The game voice acting is amazing for the wrong reasons, but it's amazing. What is the man? A miserable pile of secrets.
If you want to know, Alucard is voiced by, I believe, yeah, James Callis.
Okay, so again, not the video game voice, but he's doing a good. He's in that general area, and yeah, people like Symphony of the Night. So honestly, the best choice they could have gone with. But also, his fight with Simon is great. Like again, animation, top notch, and and with all of that, we kind of end with, "Hey, all three of us are buddy buddies now. Let's go kick Dracula's ass." See you in season two.
Wow, just breezed by. It's a great fight scene though between Trevor and
Yeah,
Alucard, right? Like it
that's
it's
what I
looks
said. It's a
amazing.
great. Yeah, that's what I said. It's a great scene. Didn't you hear that I said the animation is what? Didn't you hear it?
But it's also a good conversation between Alucard and Trevor as well, because you get to see Trevor, who was before this in the second episode. Before this finale in the first and second episode and third episode at the beginning. You get to see a Trevor who's very much done with it all and does not care, right? And by
Yeah.
the end here, you see him more than willing to die while trying to kill Alucard.
Hmm.
And you even see Alucard like, you'll die if you do this, and he's like, living was just a nice luxury.
Honestly, I don't
It's
think
some
it's
good lines
necessarily that he
here.
grew. Yeah, it's a good line, but I also didn't get from it necessarily that he's willing to die for the people more that like, so I'll die. It's not like I have something else to live for anyway.
Well, yeah,
So
it's that, but it's also living to him was a bonus luxury if he died killing what he assumed was Dracula at that point, because he
yeah.
assumed this was Dracula's castle. It
Mhm.
is not. It was
By the
not.
way, I forgot to mention, Dracula's son being named Alucard, which is Dracula backwards, I think is the only thing Castlevania ever took from any Dracula adaptation.
Yeah,
I think it's the only thing they took from any of those. So here's your fun fact.
pretty much.
But yeah, again, and this is kind of what bothers me because that fight is so good. With both character moments and the animation and the quick movement and the moves they pull on each other. But then it just kind of ends with, okay, guess you're not Dracula, and all of us have some reason to hate him. Guess we're gonna kill Dracula now. Bye. I don't know. It's again. I think maybe one more episode, or if you actually made that movie and gave it like maybe 30 more minutes, give or take, could have done. It could have been better.
Again, this is why I call it a prologue, and
Mhm.
why it's and why also I mentioned that I can completely understand why if you had this and there was nothing else, you probably watch it like, all right, and then just completely forgot about it after that point, right?
Yeah.
So I really recommend to anyone who hasn't watched it at this point, if after listening to the spoilers you've been interested, if you watch the first season, go directly into season two, because season two is
Mhm.
where you're really going to get the meat of everything and where you're really going to get into it.
That is true. And so I guess I'm one of those people though, because next time I'm gonna watch season two completely blind to it and
Mhm.
see where this is gonna lead me.
I recommend it.
Well, it doesn't matter if you recommend it or not because we need to cover the whole thing now, don't we? We can just stop in the middle
I
and
mean, we could do exactly what they did with the first season of Castlevania
okay, so
here.
join us next time for what if. No, I'm kidding.
No, join us in a year when we come back to finally cover
No,
Castle.
not a year. Not a year. Not in a million years.
We'll be
Hell.
back on October 2nd of 2022. Actually, that works out
No.
almost. The second season of Castlevania came out in October when the first came out in July.
Well, obviously, I think that, being released in October is actually kind of fitting because it's like a spoopy show, so
Too
release it
bad
for
it's the only
Halloween.
one they could get in October, though. The rest are in like July, March, and May.
Mhm. By the way, we completely planned this that the spoop that we'll be talking about the spoopy show for the entirety for most of October.
Oh, yeah, we
Totally,
totally planned. Worked that
totally.
out great. Professionals. That's
Hmm.
why we're professionals. That's what it says in the
Hmm.
tagline.
Yep. But going back to the
Not
show, is
debatable
there
at all.
anything else? Anything else you want to say about season one?
Um, like the voice acting is great, the animation is great, the art style is great. It's all extremely well done and well executed. But as you said before, it does feel like it's lacking something. And as I said before, it is a prologue. To me, that's what it feels like, and I feel like,
But I also want to praise it because at the time, even if it was a prologue, at the time it came out, I think people were praising it because they saw the potential. They
yeah,
saw something great in here, and I guess they were just excited that a video game adaptation of a franchise
hmm,
that
yeah, I was.
honestly that has been dormant for a while is showing a lot of promise
Hmm.
and again I see that promise too, and I'm really excited to finally sit down and see what the rest of it is gonna be
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
I am looking forward to
yeah.
it.
I would say right, like at the time, Again, there was a few video game things that had come out that had been decent, but this felt like the first video game thing that had come out that was good. That was like, all right, this is good. This
At
is
least in a
well
very
done.
long time, and that people kind of, the people didn't forgot about because it was recent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what was the last video game thing before this.
I mean,
Ratchet and Clank, because actually not only Ratchet and Clank, but Warcraft, the Warcraft movie was a year before this.
I've not watched that
Same
one.
with same with Assassin's Creed, and from what I've heard, both of them were really underwhelming.
The Warcraft movie was, from what I understood, really great for fans, but for just a casual moviegoer,
So
it was
the
meh.
Ratchet and Clank problem that it's great if you're a fan, but if you're not a fan, good luck.
I would say worse than the Ratchet and Clank problem. I feel like Ratchet and Clank, even if you're not a fan of the series, you could still get into it to a degree and still have at least a decent amount of fun with it. Warcraft was, if you're not a fan of this, you're just probably not going to be into. You're going to find it hard to get into. If you're like, oh, I'm a fan of fantasy, I'll go see this fantasy film. Wow, that fantasy film wasn't great because you need to be a fan of Warcraft, not just fantasy.
And I heard that Assassin's Creed was just awful.
I heard it was
no matter what, no matter if you're a fan of or not. So
I heard it was
nobody
very
won
meh.
with that.
But yeah, like we've had stuff before that, but other than that, this felt like the first really big video game thing that came out that was good.
Yeah, and even now, this is still an exception to the rule. Like I can't really think about last year we had the Sonic movie, which say what you want. It's not a masterpiece, but a lot of people still agree that it was good. Even you liked it.
Yeah,
so
it was fun. I enjoyed it. Like I had fun with it. Not
and
gonna lie.
we also had Detective Pikachu. I think it was. I'm hearing mixed things about the new Mortal Kombat movie. Like some people say it's good. Some people, I haven't seen it either, but I've heard people go on and off about it. Like some people say that it's good, that it's like legit good. Some people say it's awful. So,
but
I haven't seen it.
Also worth mentioning that we've been getting, like, from Netflix especially, a resurgence of video game shows since Castlevania 2. We've had Dota Dragon's Blood, which was, I felt, if you're a fan of the games, you'll probably notice a few things, but it feels very separated from the Dota game. Overall was, while a bit rushed, a good show. I enjoyed that. I've not seen it yet, but I've heard decent things about the Dragon's Dogma show. For some odd reason, that game of all games, which has been dead for a long time, and while a fun and great game, no one at Capcom's done nothing with. All of a sudden, just, hey, we're making a show for this. Okay, and apparently it's good. All right.
So I.
What world is this? What universe are we in now? Video game things are good.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm still waiting on that damn Sly Cooper show. Somebody please confirm that it's not dead, because fuck, Sly Cooper needs to come back. That's all I'm gonna say.
We've even got a League of Legends thing coming out in November, I believe, and I'm interested in it because
it's League of fucking Legends. Everyone plays that game. I don't even play the game, and I know what it is.
But there's a show for it, an anime for it coming out, and it looks good. What world are we living in? To be fair, League of Legends has done a lot of like animated things for their stuff, and they're like Blizzard. They actually turn out some really good animated trailer stuff, but still yet, what world are we living in when video game shows are coming out and they're good now?
Yeah, so with that said, I like next year, Sonic Prime. Don't disappoint me, Netflix. But you can do this. You showed potential with other franchises.
They have.
You can do this.
We even have a Resident Evil live action show that actually looks pretty decent coming out too. Very soon. Like there's a lot of
and then this is being recorded like a week after Chris Pratt was announced to voice Mario in the Mario movie, and it's like,
listen, that Mario movie is going to be terrible. I'm absolutely certain it's going to be terrible, but I'm going to love every second of it because it's, Chris Pratt and Jack Black as Bowser, and who's playing Luigi?
Jack Black as Bowser is actually like a legit good.
Oh no, it's a great pick. But that movie's going to be
everything
terrible.
Else.
Keegan-Michael Key is Toad. Toad is a brother now. What world do we live in?
Okay.
What world do we
Okay,
live in?
before this is goes too off the rails. So again, I might think it's a prologue at the end of the day, but Castlevania season one gets a really big approval for me for giving people hope
I would
and
argue
and
Castlevania
promise
set
for
the
something that,
stage for
yeah.
future video game stuff that has come out in the past couple years. Like, if
Mhm.
Castlevania was bad, I don't feel we would have gotten some of the video game stuff we've gotten recently, and I definitely don't feel it would have been as good as some of it was or has been claimed to be by a lot of people.
Yeah. So to sum it up, a risk that was worth taking.
Mhm.
Here's hoping that the rest of it will get better
I think
because
it
I'm
was.
looking forward to it. Mhm. So that's all for this episode of the Outcast. We hope you enjoyed it. What are your thoughts about Castlevania Season 1, the games, other video game adaptations to either shows or movies? You can tell us all about it in the comment section below, on our Tumblr, which is Berkcast Team, and on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C. So until next time, I was HC.
I was Wolf.
And we will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye bye.